going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you are worthy of joy, of goodness, of kindness, of tenderness, of being cherished and not on some condition.
Yeah.
But I see this over and over where people will say things like, well, yeah, I know she was in the hospital. Why don't you tell anybody?
Yeah. So how do you shift that energy? Like, I think that one of the things I'm noticing as I'm getting older is the level of intimacy that I can tap into with other women. I'm also hoping that I can tap into some intimacy with a man at some point. But I also am very clear that I'm not sure where my love is going to come from.
Right.
Romantic love is going to come from. But I do feel like there's something about a deeper level of intimacy that's possible for you as you get older that feels different than it did when you were younger. Do you feel like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a maturity, but you ask, like, how do I shift from that? And I grieve. I allow myself to grieve because I feel this is an injurious moment.
Yeah.
I acknowledge it as an injurious moment. I acknowledge that. I embrace that. And I move through that. Because I can't live there. I can't be there. And I allow other folk to be where they need to be. Whatever those, if I can call them shenanigans, whatever those, that's not my business.
Right.
And it's not my business to question it or judge it. I have to just make sure I don't get pulled into it and become depleted by it.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older, you talk about intimacy. As I've gotten older, my intimacy with all of my tribe has deepened. My intimacy with my husband, who's my joy, my soul. I don't like the word soulmate, but he's my soul.
Why don't you like the word soulmate? What's up with that?
Because I see it used over and over again, and sometimes.
You think it's used over and over again to the point where it really means nothing?
Sometimes it becomes trite, or when people have used it sometimes, and I have asked them about that, I was like, well, tell me more about how this person's just soulmate. And they're like, well, maybe I don't really know what soul means.
They don't have an answer.
And they're like, well, you know. And I was like, well, I know.
But what do you
does it
mean?
To you?
Right.
So that intimacy, I think, comes again from the ability to be vulnerable, and to be available.
What do you mean by that? I'm sorry, I'm making a face because I'm thinking both the word vulnerable and available made my heart
because
just
I remember before I met
up.
My husband, I was single, but I wasn't available. Because I had constructed, we create our own constructs and boundaries and borders. And sometimes it's very, and I unconsciously, I think, had done it. And Imani, it's really interesting. When Imani met my husband, Abdul Latif, she met him like 2 days after I met him. And I remember she said, Mom, can I see you in your bedroom for a minute? And I was like, yeah. And we go to the bedroom, and she locks the door, pushes me on my bed, jumps on top of me, straddles me, and gets in my face. And she goes, Mom, he's the one. I'm like, Imani, I just met this guy. Mom, he is the one. Do not figure out how to screw this up. You deserve this. It's him. And, I'm like, Imani, and she's like, Mom, trust me. He is the one.
Wow.
And they had a connection from day one that lasted until she took her last breath with him. And there were conversations they had about transitioning. I even knew that they'd had those conversations. But that vulnerability of being available, I wanted somebody in my life, but I really hadn't prepared to have somebody in my life. And
I don't understand why you always step on my toes when we're having conversations. Like, I don't appreciate you pulling out my pockets in front of people. Continue.
But when I was in Brazil, I remember I went to a spiritualist for a reader. Girl, what I did to get that reading. Wow. But I asked her, would I ever get married or be in a long-term relationship again? And she laughed in my face. And she told my friend, who translated from Portuguese to English, tell her to don't ask me stupid questions. She knows the answer when she cleans up that mess.
Oh.
She's like, what? I mean, she was like, what? Tell her to clean up her mess. And she said, and she knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then a few months later, I was in the grocery store, and an elder who I did not know, I don't know who this woman was. She knew who I was. But she walked up and she said, I have a message for you. I thought she was talking about from a person. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, if you build your nest, he will come. She said, you don't have a nest yet. Okay. About 3 months after that, a cousin of mine, like a third cousin, woman, a few years older than me, who I really never saw, called my daughter, said, I had a dream last night. Tell your mama she needs to start preparing for a man who's coming into her life. And the sister died a few weeks later. And Eva was like, why's she calling? And she's like, okay. So I wasn't available. But I bought the house. I built the nest. I cleaned up my mess. I was available. I was ready for him to fly through the window. And I did, ask the universe. When I met him, when he came to my house, and I don't even want to call it a date, but I remember excusing myself from him, going into my bedroom, closing the door, and I was shaking. And I was sweating, like cold sweat. And I said, God, I did not ask you for anybody. What is this? What am I supposed to do with him? Because I did not ask you for him.
How old were you when you met Brother Abdul?
We've been married for 20 years and I'm 66.
Jeez.
So what's that?
46.
So, yeah, you know the story. We met on a Wednesday and we got married on a Saturday, and we've been together for 20 years.
Yeah. He's quite magical, and so are you.
He is magical, but we were, and we often talk about how did we met. Sometimes we'll say, God, wish we had met each other when we were younger. We'd have all, we're getting old, and there's so much you're trying to cram into these last years, and I said we weren't ready. That's why we would have burned each other out. I mean, our lights would have just collided. It would have been an explosion. I said, no, we weren't ready for each other.
Yeah,
we hadn't been porked. I mean, we hadn't been in the brine. We hadn't been seasoned. And I said, yeah, we're here
now. I was going to ask you a question around how have you called forth love and joy? And like this feels like that's part of that. Like you bought your home, you poured your love into that home. Your home is such a beautiful, warm space. It feels like a big, cozy couch that smells like Marrakesh in Morocco. It's just it's stunning. And it's also a place where I feel like you can snuggle up and sleep for hours if you want to.
Well, spaces and environments and landscapes are very metaphorical for me for how I live my life. I love spaces. I love beautiful spaces. And I'm not talking about expensive spaces. I wanted my home that when somebody crossed the threshold to feel like they were home, that they were home, and that they felt very welcome, that they felt tenderness there, that they felt safety there, that they felt love there. I wanted it to be a sanctuary. And that's because I needed a sanctuary. And if I need a sanctuary, want a sanctuary, then I want to share sanctuary.
Yeah.
And that's why we love to entertain, love having people, breaking bread, sleeping over. You know, our friends from Morocco come stay a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We have 4 people coming from France next summer. But that's, to me, that's what home is.
Yeah.
Because if you can build, home is very personal and private. There are people I have known for 20, 30 years, and they call me one of their best friends. I've never been in their homes.
Mm.
I've never been invited into their homes. And I've never asked them why. I'm not the person who drops by unless we have a serious relationship. And we have that kind of, you can just pop in. And I've always had that with my true friends. It's like they know they don't need an invitation.
Sure.
But, home is major.
Yeah.
And it's not about the value of the house. It's the value of the quality of life that's happening there.
Yeah.
It's the value of what home is.
Yeah.
And it was a home before Abdul came. The energy in my house was purposefully, intentionally, decidedly female. And what terrified me when he crossed the threshold was that the energy, the air in the room changed. And it terrified me, and I knew what it was. There was no male energy. No male energy had inhabited that home. It was mine. And I had to extend the invitation for it to become an ours. Yeah, and I think that's a challenge for a lot of... I have girlfriends who have fabulous homes, and they're single, and they're always talking about they want to meet people. And then I said, but you meet these guys who you really like, and then you complain about how they show up in your house. But he doesn't put the toilet seat down. And I was like, if him putting the toilet seat down is the lead, but what else? No, that's the only thing. And he leaves his shoes and socks. I'm like, girl, he can be trained to put the toilet seat down. He can be trained to pick up his shoes. If that's your only beef, stop. This is make it a home. If it's a home, it doesn't matter where he leaves the shoes. Right? But you're obsessed with this house.
Yeah. And
you've not... I understood when this woman said, build your nest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that joy, it's organic between Abdul and I. And it's not always sexual. Sometimes we're eating breakfast and he just looks at me and cracks up. And he just looks at me and we both, and we know, we share it. We know what that crack up is about. Or sometimes, he'll look at me and he'll get very emotional. He's like, I can't believe you're doing all you're doing. I can remember when you couldn't lift your head off the pillow, when I had to pick you up and take you to the bathroom, when I had to bathe you, when I had to feed you, chop up your food in 1,000 little... So, that's the power of that vibrancy. Yeah,
I can see that. I can see that when you guys are together.
Oh, yeah.
And the care that you have for each other and the way you move with each other. There's so much tenderness and playfulness. Sometimes you can see couples who've been together for a while, and they don't look like they're enjoying their partner. They look like, well, I'm here with them. Yeah. They don't look like they're enjoying that person. Yeah. And you and Brother Abdul look like you thoroughly enjoy each other's company.
We do. And we have embraced that this is our time. That is our time. We have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that we love dearly. But for as long as we can move through the world and get on a plane and go somewhere. We were in Morocco this summer, and I fell and I got hurt. And we were real clear, and our daughters were having a fit on this side of the ocean. It was like, we don't have that many more years to do this kind of gallivanting, but we're going to do it for as long as we can do it.
Right.
And we also do it at home, though. And that's the other thing, is we can be on vacation at home all the time in a mental space, if you know what I mean.
I do.
We can create that space.
That's actually the next question I want to ask you. So, there are 2 more questions I have for you. One is a question around creativity, and then I want to ask a listener letter. So this is a quick question for you, kind of. I remember when you spoke at North Star Church, you said, how do you court